Here we go. So today, my goal is to have everyone here set up their IDE, set up their Unity, and install Decompiler. And I'll explain also how to use the Decompiler, because it's not the most straightforward thing. I believe everyone should be here. 6:07, 7 minutes over, so I'm gonna get started. All right. Uh, so first things first, the IDE. It really your choice of IDE really matters or changes depending on your platform. So if you're Windows, or Windows is the easiest, just install Visual Studio. It's the best one available. For Mac, I would also recommend Visual Studio. The issue with Visual Studio on Mac is it's retiring August 31st, 2024. Uh, but when that time comes, just you can install Rider or any of the other Linux IDEs available. And so we primarily will be working with the .NET framework. It's developed by Microsoft for Windows. So while there's support on Mac, that's not the best. And on Linux, you're really out of options. The best one is Visual Studio Code. So the Visual Studio Code has support through a project called OmniSharp, which is great for general .NET tasks, but for modding, specifically for modding PlateUp, it lacks a lot of features that we would want. Um, so use Visual Studio Code or actually code on Linux at your own risk. Um, but if you're more familiar with coding, then I would definitely recommend using Vim over VS Code. Vim have will lack a lot of useful features for new developers, but it'll be a lot more convenient to work with if you already know what you're doing. Um, and yeah, so all of the download links are here. So I'll give people maybe 10-15 minutes to just go through it. And if you have any problems installing, let me know. Um, let me see if I can, well, I would install it with you guys, but my internet is not the fastest. So I'm just going to sit. Yep. And for Visual Studio, Community Edition's the one you want. We don't really care about any of the tooling that's offered for the professional enterprise versions. Also, the community is a free one. And if you have any questions or want to speak up, feel free to make a request. I believe I have to give you, I have to approve your request to speak. Oh, and for anyone that just joined, there's a PDF in the chat that you can look at for, well, this PDF right here. So if you want to follow along or just like go ahead, because today we're just going to be setting stuff up. And by the way, while people install Visual Studio or whatever IDE that they want, if you have any questions in general about modding or like anything more specific, feel free to just ask. I'll be here for the next hour or two, so feel free to ask away. If anyone wants to try running Visual Studio with Wine, I don't recommend it. If you know what that means, don't worry about it. Wine is basically a tool that lets you run um, Windows software on Linux, or really on Mac too. It's a Windows something emulator. I would not recommend running Visual Studio with Wine. There's a lot of problems with it, so I would stick to the things that I've mentioned in the Linux category here. All right. I assume everyone has just about got their IDs, have at least picked an ID out for whatever system they have. I'm gonna move on to specifically what we do for Visual Studio. If you pick something that isn't just for Visual Studio, if you pick something like Writer or Vim or Visual Studio Code, so basically for on Linux, uh, let me know and I can work with you individually towards the end of the workshop uh, to get you set up because those take a little bit more effort and it's just very different from Visual Studio. So for Visual Studio, the key things that we have to do is in the installer and the workloads tab, we want the .NET desktop environment and the game development with Unity. These two are absolutely crucial to what we're doing. Um, and in addition to that, because PlateUp is made in an older version of .NET, specifically 4.7.2, we need to make sure in the individual components that the .NET Framework 4.7.2 targeting pack and the .NET Framework project and item templates are installed. Real quick, I'm streaming my entire window, so you can see what I have selected here, just the .NET desktop environment, the game developments Unity, and these two individual components. And if you forget to install something here, it really doesn't matter. You can always modify your Visual Studio later. All right, it's been a couple of minutes. Hopefully all of you have Visual Studio set up. I'm gonna move on to the Unity hub. Okay, so if you installed Visual Studio and if you have the game development's Unity workload, workload, you're going to have Unity Hub as well. It takes a bit to install, so I don't assume everyone here has Unity Hub. But if you do have Unity Hub, just pop it open and go to your installs. You do want to install specifically um, the 2023 .3.43 F1 version. I don't actually have that installed right now. I've been having issues with Unity, uh, but that is the version that you want. And the reason why we ask that you have that specific version is because that's the one used by PlateUp. Um, so between versions, while they should all be compatible with each other, or at least all versions should be backwards compatible, that's not always true. There's going to be some weird issues if you try to use a more recent version. That's okay. If you have an out-of-date version of Unity Hub, it doesn't really matter. We only really need to install the Unity itself. The hub is what it is. You can update, it's not going to make a difference. Yep, and Starflex has linked to the archive page to find the 2021. If anyone's having trouble finding the 2020.3.43 F1 version. Hopefully, everyone has found the correct version of Unity in the archives and have it installing. I'm going to move on to installing a decompiler. So this part, decompilers are basically just tools that help you take some code that well, some release code and compile it back into something that we can read, decompile it into something that we can understand. And for us, it's extremely useful because PlateUp has some incredibly smart solutions to problems that we encounter when modding. And it's pretty useful to see how PlateUp has done it. Uh, and a lot of the times, if you are just getting started, it's always easier to look at something that already exists and try to do something similar, which I assume many of us will do. Uh, and another really useful thing with decompilers is you can take a look at release mods. Since not all mods are open source, not all mods are going to provide their GitHub, but you can always take a look at them, use it as an example. Uh, and something to note is it's okay to decompile code. There's you're not breaking any laws. There's nothing wrong with it. But try not to just copy it wholesale unless it's some open source software, or even if it is open source, try to follow their license, whatever a license might entail. But definitely feel free to take inspiration from existing mods. Uh, and so to install decompilers, so the ones that we mainly use are ILSpy and DNSpy. So they're both GitHub projects. And so when you go to them, just look at the first release and whichever one for your machine. So if you're on Windows, that's the .msi. If you're on Linux, that's the .zip. I'm not really sure what the VSIX is for, but oh, right, that's the Visual Studio add-on. So if you want to have it directly in Visual Studio, Visual Studio already has ILSpy, so I'm not actually too certain what that add-on is, but you can get it as an extension, and maybe you can use it decompile in Visual Studio. But I would recommend getting the standalone program. And I actually do not have DNSpy, so I'm going to download that with you guys right now. So, and then, yeah, so for DNSpy, we want the net, not the net framework version. Or actually, I think we do want the net framework. I don't know. DNSpy is pretty old, so I've always used the net version. It's worked fine for me. But, I mean, Starflex or if anyone else, let me know if, or Milo, let me know if we should be using the framework version. Yeah, like Milo says, you can choose one or the other. You don't need to do both. It can be useful to have both because they'll give you different results sometimes. I recommend ILSpot personally. It gives me the best results more often than not. Yeah, they both have their own advantages. But if you use Visual Studio or if you use Writer, or even Visual Studio Code, they have built-in ILSpy, but it's still helpful to have the standalone program. Once we move past installing Decompiler and I introduce the other useful tools, I'll go back to decompilers and explain how to use them, or some neat tricks that you can do with them. With the Visual Studio installing an older version, that's absolutely fine, yeah. Um, Visual Studio 2022 has some benefits compared to 2019, but I mean, it's not going to force you to use 2019. You can just keep using 2022. Um, I guess the reason why it's doing that is probably because it's defaulting to Visual Studio 2019. So when you're editing stuff in Unity, it'll try to use that one. Uh, but you can also just change that once you have Unity installed. When you're installing IOSpy, the difference in the ARM and non-ARM version is just your CPU. So I believe Macs are all going to be ARM based. For Windows, it's going to be if you're using Intel or uh, AMD CPU, and for Linux, that's completely up to your system. Whatever unique Linux system you have. I'll give everyone else a couple more minutes till 6:40, and then I'm gonna move on to talking about the other useful tools and then explaining the tools that we just installed. All right. So here's some other useful tools. So for 3D modeling, I found Blender much more intuitive than Unity's own editor, but you're free to keep using Unity. Quite a few people do just use Unity's built-in editor, but Blender is it's out there. It's very useful. We have a program called Asset Ripper that we use to extract the game's assets. Um, so this is how, for like, let's say you wanted to use like the plate model from PlateUp. You can use the asset ripper and extract the PlateUp's plate model and use it in your own uh, model. And it also does decompile code, but it just uses IL spy in the backend. So I would recommend using ILSpy individually instead of using Asset Ripper's decompilation software. Yes, and Nova has posted a very useful document on uh, vertex shading for Blender users, or in general. I believe it's also linked in the the developer general chat, but it's in the channel right now if you wanted to save it. Just notice a slight typo here. Just ignore it. I think it makes sense. Um, yeah, but those are the general other useful, or those are the general tools that I find useful in addition to the ones that we have that I've already covered. Um, Feel free to chip in if anyone in the audience uses another tool that they find useful. Yes, I did forget to mention GitHub. Okay, so GitHub is a site that we use to host, that you can use to host your code online. In addition to that, or I should say, the more useful part of it is that um, there's a program called Git, which basically it allows you to keep track of all the changes that you made with your code, um, and it allows you to it allows you to collaborate with other people and make it really clear what you've changed, in case something breaks or just for other people to see. Um, so this is GitHub. I will say that their command line tool is somewhat unintuitive. It takes a little bit to get used to. But I do have a program called GitHub Desktop that does some of that for you. And they also have great documentation on how to use their command line tools. Yep. And as Milo pointed out, there is a Git Changes tab within Visual Studio that you can use. I can show it real quick. It's pretty useful. Let me just make a new project. Well, actually, I'll get back to this later once we're ready, and I'll explain Visual Studio. Okay. I'll just explain it. Okay, so in Visual Studio, when you first open it, you have this window where it's like open recent, get started. Most of the time, you're going to be looking at clone a repository uh, because we have a template. Let me see if I can find the link real quick. It's in the mod developer channel. It's been there. But we do have a PlateUp modding template by Zeknik. So this is it. Uh, it does need a bit of an update. So hopefully before the next workshop when you'll actually start using the template, we'll have it updated at that point. But in the meantime, so normally you would just do clone repository. You can just paste that in and clone it. And it'll make it for you. It's going to be pretty nice. In fact, I'll just do it right now to show what it looks like. Takes a little bit. All right. Yep. And here it is. This is a Unity Project Explorer. Not quite what I was expecting to see. 1 second. Where can we find it? It's in the pinned for in the developer general. I'll also copy paste it here. If you're referring to this GitHub. In the meantime, I'm seeing that it is not opening the right file. Visual Studio doing its thing. Okay. Let me see if I can find it. All right. Yes. Unfortunately, a lot of other sites are um, banned by the bot, but this is a site that you're referring to. A very useful site. I actually used it myself back when I was learning Git. So yes, let me see about adding it to the whitelist. So it is quite the useful site for learning how to use Git. Okay. Okay, but yeah, so when you clone directly with Visual Studio, it gets confused because there's no solution file. So instead it looks for the solution file within the Unity project. So that's not very helpful. What you want to do is go out and you want to open this .cs project that's available in the template. And you can just open that with Visual Studio 2022 to see the actual template. Yep, and here it is. So this is the template. Will be updated shortly. And while we're on the topic, and yeah, the bot is pretty aggressive with links. But so while we're on the topic of Visual Studio and the template, recently, I need to find it real quick. That's not it. Wait, oh, there it is. Well, no, there it's not. Uh, Starflex has been working on a new template. It's a little bit different. Let me pull it up real quick. Here it is. All right. So yeah, he's been working on a node-based template builder. It's basically the same thing. It'll make the template. It's just a template. Um, it's a little bit harder to use. It's not just built into Visual Studio. In order to use it, uh, you need to have some sort of bash. In my case, I'm using WSL. If you have Git, and you should have Git, you can use Git bash. I believe you should be able to do just this natively on Mac, so it's really only a problem on Windows. But on Windows, you can just do npm-install, PlateUp, template, builder. I believe I already have it installed, but I'm going to install it again just to make sure. Right, I forgot. You had it with sudo. All right. And then in order to use it, you just run PlateUp. And yes, there's one from Blargo as well. I haven't taken a look at that right now yet, so I'm going to take a look at it real quick. Yeah, it's the same thing. Um, So yeah, you just fill in your name or the name you want to go by, your mod name. Um, your GUID should be something of that form. GUID is their globally unique identifier, so it should be something of that form. But as long as it's unique, it doesn't matter. And namespace should it's basically just the name that is used internally in code to refer to your the collection of your code. It's a little bit the concept's a little foreign if you don't know programming. So I would say just name it after your mod, and you'll figure out what it is when you start coding. And yes, um, you should have your namespace start with kitchen. Um, there's you don't have to; it'll work without it. Uh, I don't know if we've quite discovered all the differences if your namespace doesn't have kitchen to start at the prefix, but it adds some additional features. It's not bad. It's only going to be good. So I would use Kitchen to be safe. Yeah, pretty straightforward. How to open a Git template? Okay, so if you want to just use the template by Zeknik in Visual Studio, the first option under Get Started is Clone a Repository. And you just paste the link to that template. Yes, so that's what I was explaining earlier. When you use Visual Studio to, I guess, clone a repository, if you look at the base like repository here, there's no solution file, or there is a solution file, but it's right here. It's under the Unity project. So Visual Studio automatically opens this instead of this project. Um, so what you want to do, if you're using a template, and yeah, like Milo said, it's definitely going to be easier if you just download it as a zip and unzipping it instead of downloading it here. That was our first time doing it. I had no idea that you would encounter that issue, But if you find where installed it locally, and it should be in your user directly under source and then repos, and then PlateUp modding template, you can just open the CS project in Visual Studio, and then the next time you save, it'll make a solution file for you. So that's all about well, making a mod from a template. If you just wanted to make a mod without going through a template, it's pretty simple. You just click create a new project, and we're looking for .NET. Starfluxes is updated, which I believe means Blargos is also updated. Zeknix is not updated yet, but that should be updated in the next day or so. So before the next workshop, I should say, is when you would expect it to be updated. Yeah. But yeah, so if you want to just make a new project without going through a template, you just do create a new project. And if you search for .NET, there's going to be a class library for the .NET framework. And this is the same thing. So if you select, so for project type, it's not quite as simple as that. So it's quite literally what type of project are you looking to make. So basically, standalone is like if you just wanted a mod for PlateUp that does not depend on Kitchen Library, and most mods don't need to depend on Kitchen Library. Uh, so that would be like a lot of visual mods. It'll be a lot of let's see, a lot of like yeah, so UI, a lot of uh, utility mods. Basically, anything that's not a recipe mod shouldn't be a Kitchen Library mod. Because Kitchen Library is only useful at the moment if you're working with custom uh, game data objects, which is basically like cosmetics, dishes, appliances, that sort of. Yeah, it's not a necessity. There are going to be some utilities, but I would recommend not making it a Kitchen Library mod unless you actually need the core features of Kitchen Library. But to explain all of these project types, so standalone is for if you're making a mod like to count money. I'm just trying to think of examples from the workshop. Most UI mods, or all UI mods, are going to be standalone. Um, a lot of the mods that just like count the amount of mess and like deduct money for the mess and stuff like that, those are also going to be standalone. Yeah, so if you wanted to make a chocolate covered banana, that would require Kitchen Library. And then so these two project types, Kitchen Library is just if you wanted to use Kitchen Library without all of its, well, so this is the Kitchen Library with assets is what you want to use if you're making like a new recipe or a new cosmetic. Kitchen Library is closer to just a standalone, where you're just using it for Kitchen Lab's utility functions. Um, and it'll be the same thing, pretty much. Yeah, so the concept will be covered in more detail tomorrow. I'm just introducing the template for the time being. Yeah. That's pretty much it for just getting started to how to use Visual Studio. For the most part, you should be using a template. If you really want to do something special, you just make a new project, make sure that the template type is going to be .NET Framework, and it's a class library. And that's it for Visual Studio. Yeah, so for the Halloween enchantments, You can definitely look at them, use them as a reference. So a lot of those I think will be covered in the ECS workshop. A lot of the ways that like you can make a conveyor that does that, because the object itself just stores data. It doesn't have any other useful properties other than just storing data. Okay, but moving on to decompilation, because I think uh, I've explained Visual Studio pretty well. If anyone has any questions about Visual Studio or anything else, feel free to just ask. But I'm going to move on to explaining IL-SPI. So let me clear my assemblies real quick. I have a lot of stuff here that are not needed. All right. Okay. So to use IL-SPI for first things first, um, we can just go to PlateUp. Let me look for PlateUp real quick. So we want to just go to the managed and find all of the kitchen DLs. Not necessarily all of them, but it's useful to just have them available and pre-decompiled. But here you can see like all of these DLs have been decompiled. So right here you can select how you want it to be portrayed. So right now it's just being portrayed as basic C#. I think it's easier if I just go to an actual file. Yeah, so for example, this is a struct, it's C endgame popup, and it's got a property is ready to continue. The other ways of viewing it are only useful for more advanced use cases of modding. So we have a library called Harmony that lets us modify the IL, so the IL is what you see here, and lets us modify the IL directly. But that you won't really find too useful. For the most part, try to avoid modifying the base IL. And if you don't know how to do it, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Was the way I would explain Harmony. But yeah, so and this is a decompiler IL-SPI. It's just showing you everything about the class, all the code. Okay. So some useful things. We can, for example, let's say you wanted to do something when the save or before the day ends. I believe there's a day start system or start of day. Yeah, so there's a start of day system. So this will tell you kind of like what exactly happens at the start of the day. So in this case, see that it requires a singleton, and all of these things will go into will be talked about in more detail in the further workshops. So some useful things you can do in an IL spot is if you wanted to see like what else uses start of day system. On the left here, you can see like derived types. So these are the other start of day systems that exist. Let's say you wanted to know, let's see, well, this isn't really not useful. Let me take a look. Where is a more useful? Okay. Yeah, so let's say you wanted to know oh, yes. So to get to this point in ILSpy, I went to the PlateUp directory. You can find that by going to your Steam library, right-clicking, going to Manage, and then Browse Local Files. That'll bring you to your PlateUp directory. So you can go there, go to the PlateUp data folder, go to Managed, and you'll find all of the libraries that are used in PlateUp. The ones that we are concerned about start with the kitchen prefix. So if you just select everything that has a kitchen prefix, you can drag them into ILSpy. And it'll decompile all of them. Yes, for sure. It is definitely useful to also have the controller's DLL kitchen connector DLL to cover everything PlateUp. But well, this is more of a cursory overview. Yeah. Okay. But yeah. Okay. So you can just take a look at, so for after classes, it'll tell you where it's derived from. It'll tell you all of its, I guess, parent classes. And most useful feature you'll find, um, other than the search function is like how you actually find how to do stuff for the most part. But the most useful thing apart from that is if you just look at anything that you're interested in, you can analyze it. And it'll show you where it's instantiated, where it's used, where it's exposed. In this case, it's not really important. But yeah, it'll show you everything you need to know of, like, if you want to know where this estimated earnings tracker is used. So in this case, it's used here at the update, and the on update function of the update money tracker. It's used in the on create for compiler. This code is going to be a bit more confusing, and that is because this is a Unity game. Unity does a lot of things in the back to make things more efficient, but it's still understandable. It's just harder to read. Yep, there it is. That's basically the two features you need to know about ILSpy. The search and the analyze. If you wanted to decompile anything, just drag it into ILSpy. Yep. If you ever wanted to just learn more about the game, just take a look at the else. It'll tell you everything about the game. There's nothing that is hidden, just stuff that is a little bit harder to understand. All right. And then some other things to be aware of. When you when you create a mod, the general structure that you want to look for is, um, you want a content folder in a directory named after your mod, and in that content folder, everything you have should be in there. Uh, so let me just real quick make a mods folder. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so let's say, so for kitchen library, for example, you have a folder named kitchen lib and a folder named content. And here would be your DLL and any like assets that you have. And your assets will be bundled in an asset bundle. So that's the general structure of a mod. Um, when we upload mods, we use the mod uploader.exe here. It's in your PlateUp data file, data directory. It's a little bit slow, but let me open it real quick to just show you guys and explain all of the options. There it is. Oh yeah. When you first make a mod, you can just select a mod in your directory. Realize that this is kind of annoying. Use. All right, here it is. Let's straight up data. Sign up, mods, kitchen library. You just select that. I don't have a DL right now, but yeah. Oh, shoot. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't realize that it just makes it directly. Let me delete that real quick, if I can. But yeah, it's really simple. You just have a mod in a folder in that form. It'll just make a mod. All right. Oh, it's not what I wanted to go to. All right. Yeah. Yes, mods are private. So no need to worry. Wait, where was that page? There it is. Okay. Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions before I explain, I guess, the workflow that we generally go use in Visual Studio? Just make a new mod and set it up. You can make a dummy mod to test, or like I will be making a dummy mod that you can test, but I'm just going over the concepts. But if you want to follow along, feel free. So, when you first go to Visual Studio, you generally want to just copy a template, but I'm gonna go through it from the beginning. Just we make a new project. So this isn't using a template. If you use a template, you would already have a project. You wouldn't have to do anything here. Yep. Okay. So the first thing you want to do, and I guess you wouldn't have to do this because once again a template has it done, but I have a nugget package that's quite useful for modding PlateUp. So first thing you want to do if you're just making a mod without a template is install the nugget package. Once that's installed, uh, let me see if I can pop open the code. Nope, that is not what I was looking for. References. Ah, never mind. Let me just pull it up on GitHub. All right. So a couple things about this nugget package. Um, you can always in Visual Studio unload your project and edit your project file. So this is what defines everything there is about your project. Um, it's an XML document. Most of it isn't really important, or rather, it's not important for you to understand what it does. It's all done for you. But okay. So for some people, if you have like a more unique Steam setup, you have multiple Steam libraries. Um, my Nugget patch can fail to find where PlateUp installed. So in that case, you can just overload this game path, and you can do that by making uh, anywhere in a property group. You can just do game path, and you should put your game path there. Same with anything else. So with any of these other properties. So if my nugget package is failing to work for you, just take a look. Um, and one thing you want to check is just set all of these paths to what they should be, and it should work for you. Some features that this package comes with is, so by default, I have mod deploy true. So what that's going to do is when you build your mod, so if I were to build this real quick, I forgot I got it loaded first. Reload dependencies. All right. So if I were to build this, and it's building right here. So one succeeded, nice. And I go to, where is my PlateUp library? Let's see. Yep, here it is. So here it is. You have class library too. I didn't really bother giving it too descriptive a name. It puts it in the right format for you. You can just upload this to the workshop directly. And it's got the DLL there. Another feature it has is enable game debugging. That I don't know if it's still true. I guess I can just test it out real quick. So basically, if you click start here, it should launch PlateUp if it's working. It is in fact working. Nice. It's quite buggy the way it works. You definitely need a lot of memory to have it work properly. Yeah, my mic is just frozen right now. Oh, and it failed to load, which makes sense. This mod currently does nothing. Yeah. No. So if it does nothing, PlateUp will complain about it. Let me see if I can pull up in the log and just show you. Oh, that's not it. That's just some Magic Gathering stuff. Don't worry about it. Where is the log? Oh gosh, this someone remembered a command to pull up the log path because I do not. Ah, thank you. Oh right, we have right. I remember. Well, I leave it open in Notepad++. Normally, I just haven't had the time to really mod PlateUp recently. Here we go. So, right, I have a bunch of mods installed. Well, it complained about something when I launched the game. That's why it failed. Yeah, I'm not gonna look into it too much. I was complaining about something when I launched. Potentially, it just might have not liked the fact that I was launching it with the Roslyn debugger. Basically, this will let you attach like, if you ever go into like Chrome, um, you can like put breakpoints in your code and like stop when it gets there and like take a look at what variables are available. It's not that useful. I don't think you need it. So I haven't really worked on this too much. Some other things that this lets you do is copy local. What this does is it copies dependencies to your build directory. You should not have this on unless you have a reason to be using it. So I say that because, like, for example, if you want to just test some code without PlateUp, but like using PlateUp's libraries, that's what the copy dependencies is for. And that's like, you wouldn't be using a class library for this. You would be using, I forget the name of the template. One second. You would be using a something execute console app. Yeah. So if you're working with a console app, then that is what this feature is for. And so generate XML documentation. This is false. XML documentation is useful if you want other people to be able to decipher what you're doing. Um, so in Kitchen Library, we have some of that. Let me just pull it open real quick. So in main, you can see that we have like these comments, so that explain what each of these things are. That's what the XML documentation is. It'll generate an XML file with all of this, so it'll show up in like IDE and other decompilers. Um, and then auto reference. This is always true. This you can always disable it if you don't want this feature, but it'll reference PlateUp's DLLs, workshop mods, and local mods, so that you don't have to figure out what it is that you need to reference. generally, you would have to uh, go to the references and you would have to like add a reference for for like the DLL that you are trying to use. So in our case, all the PlateUp ones, but this will do it for you. So that's my utility. Okay. But yeah, so generally when you first make a mod, you can just, I have Kitchen Library installed, so I'm just gonna extend base mod, all of that. Oh wait, that is not what I wanted you to do. Oh no. Yeah, that's not what I wanted to do at all. Okay. But yeah, so that's a simple project. I'll leave it for the Kitchen Library workshop to actually explain how to make a working Kitchen Library mod, uh, because it's quite involved. No, I wouldn't say quite involved. There's quite a lot to talk about when it comes to actually making a mod. But this is basically all you need if you wanted to get started. The rest of the information you can find on our wiki. So if you go to Kitchen Library, we do have a wiki. I believe we also have one on the uh, games wiki. It's somewhere on here. I'm pretty sure. Um, no clue how to find it, but it would be here somewhere. Unauthorized. Interesting. Ah, okay. So that's why it's not just available. Yeah. So this is more up to date. So if anyone wanted to just get started, after this, as you have all the tools you need, this is this will help you get started in actually making your first mod. But we'll go over this as well for the Kitchen Library workshop. And yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to cover today. You should be able to get started. Uh, any questions? I'll be here until 8 to answer any questions that come up. Where does Unity come in? Okay, so Unity is useful for 3D modeling, or it's only used for modeling. So let's say you wanted to make some like a new cosmetic. You would have to you have to import it into Unity, and then make an asset bundle in Unity, and then we can access an asset bundle from in our code to use that asset. Yeah. If you just want it to code, if you don't care about like using new assets and stuff, um, then you don't need Unity. Yeah, Unity is just used to create the models and export it. We don't care about it for, oh yes, stuff too. It's just for assets. That part will be covered throughout the workshops, but I would assume it's going to be covered mostly in the next one with me and Starflux, since we'll be explaining how to use Kitchen Library. Yes, you can definitely make sparkly players. How do you the template? You can find a Nugget package. Here, let me just link my GitHub for that real quick. You can find it here. If you're looking for it on Visual Studio, you can find it in a cache somewhere locally. I don't remember the location of that cache. Um, do you need you don't need Unity to create the extra assets. Like I said, I prefer Blender for making my assets, but Unity is there by default. If you like Unity, feel free to use it. You need Unity to bundle the assets into a format that PlateUp accepts. Oh, okay, perfect. So it's VS dependencies and packages. Let's see. Well, ah, gotcha. In general, when you add cards, or like, yeah, when you add game data objects, cards are also game GDOs. It generally does not cause issues. We do tend to have some issues with every update, but they're not specific to anything you do. It's just the general, updates. Yeah, they won't just break. Your saves you're not gonna lose a save between updates for the most part, and like any changes that happen are probably going to be backwards compatible. Yeah. This one I don't believe is recorded, but I think we'll definitely talk about recording the later sessions. Or I believe we will come up with a way to record the later sessions. Oh, you are perfect. Yes, you can. The particle system in Unity is pretty good. Um, I mean, I was surprised to find the amount of like particles that already exist, the VFXs, I guess, that already exist, like the smoke on the food items, because I've never really noticed them until I took a look at the actual assets. Yeah. Um, Interesting. I mean, Fog of War is pretty interesting. Just a vision, just restrict vision. Ah, that sounds like something you would do. Ah, okay. So basically, you're gonna be fine. Like you shouldn't be using the Roslyn debugger because it doesn't really provide all that many benefits to PlateUp. So basically, you can just do the normal like testing procedure. You can always like log stuff into the log. You can always just like do the typical, I guess, debugging steps. Um, you just won't be able to attach your debugger to PlateUp so that like for example, if you see on the left here, I believe you can add debug somewhere. I forget how to add debugs actually. The break steps. There's a way to add stuff. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, there's a feature in Visual Studio that I can never remember how to use, but basically you can add like breakpoints into your code and make it, oh, press left of the number line. Wait, somewhere here. Ah, there it is. Yeah, so you can add like breakpoints here. you won't be able to do that if you don't have a lot of memory. Uh, but you'll be fine. I have 32 gigabytes of memory, and I struggle running it. So I think most machines will struggle running the debugger with PlateUp. And it makes sense. It's because you're basically adding like all of these stops and or you're adding a lot of like I guess IL to just be able to stop at the right place. Oh wow. But yeah, I don't pretty sure most people don't really use the debugger feature here. So you're gonna be fine. Yeah, it's definitely more performant to just put in a heavy amount of logging. Um, I haven't found it too useful, which is why I haven't worked more into developing this feature. But it's there if you want to use it. It does work. All right. In terms of logging, as you can see, feel free to just log whatever. um, I mean, I highly doubt you'll be logging more than Milo, so and it's not gonna affect too much. It is gonna be the same time tomorrow. Yeah, Milo logs the most out of everyone, and that hasn't had any negative effects on the game, so don't worry about logging. So for the basic first plate up mod that I generally introduce people with, it's just making a simple item group. So let me see if I can pull up the guide for item groups. Yeah, we have a getting started. It looks fairly basic at the moment, so let me just pull up the item group, and I would recommend just making this to start. It's by far the easiest thing to do and test. Um, yes, that's true. If the log gets too big, it can't be sent on Discord. We should probably figure out a solution for that at some point. Maybe like whether it's like we have a tool for trimming or something. Here's something that I have. I've made a collection to so this is just a collection of useful mods for testing. So you've got like all the basic libraries, and you've got Unity Explorer and PlateUp Explorer, which are both tools to help you just look around at what's in the game already. Oh, yeah, it'll be so yeah. I mean, so our logging system is pretty simple. We have like this little tag in front of every log that tells you what type of log it is. So yeah, we could just filter out like all the info and everything left will be actual problems. But we haven't made a tool for that yet, so one day. There is a tool for that in game, but well, I believe it's in the Kitchen Library developer menu. Yes, exactly. The dev UI allows filtering, but I'm not sure how useful that is for just viewing, because it only filters for your current log. I don't believe it filters for. You can't just like upload a log to it and filter there. Although that would be a pretty easy feature to build in. Yes. Yeah. But if you look through this log, basically all of this is either kitchen library or Milo's mods. So don't be too afraid, or don't be afraid to be liberal with your use of logs, even in release mods. If it helps debug, leave it in because it's always good to be able to see what's wrong. It helps a lot, like after updates and stuff, where it's important to try to figure out what broke. And so it's just good to have the debug logs. Okay, sure. Sounds good. Um, yep. Item groups are just the easiest way to get started. It's tangible. Yeah, exactly. It's easy to test. You get to see exactly what you're doing. And for the assets, it's really easy to just use your test cubes mod, get some nice assets out, or copy an in-game one. I would show, I guess, the more modeling side of things, but I don't believe I have any of it set up at the moment. But, yeah. I mean, if you guys have any more problems, feel free to ask me. Believe I'll be here until 8. I guess in the meantime, if I'm going to be working on that one fork I've been trying to do at the kitchen library for a while. Yes. I've been talking well, I've been thinking about doing auto registration for a while now. Haven't I found the time. But honestly, it's a pretty simple feature to add, so I should have been there. Off of add view prefab. Prefab. Also do view. I mean, yeah, I'll look into that, and I think, oh, I mean, Starflex probably will too. Let's see. Oh, I remember why I was struggling with this before, because we have if we just pass in the type, we can't cast it to that type. Okay. Um, Oh, we still have 3. Do you guys have any questions, or you just watching? Yeah, it's a pretty good wrapping up point. Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. Should definitely sleep with 5.5 hours. It's not a whole lot of time to sleep.